Guild Wars 2 Conquest PvP is all about being in the right place at the right time, and because of that, it is important to rotate between the objectives according to your matchups and roles. There are 4 main roles in PvP. The DPS like to be in large fights pressuring the enemy off of objectives. Supports like to be in those large fights with their DPS but keeping their team alive. Duelists prefer smaller scale fights such as 1v1s and are more self-sufficient. If you would like to learn more about these first 3 roles, then check the link in the description to the other rotation videos and check the support video for a more in-depth coverage of the general roles. As far as this video, I will be going over the 4th and final role, the roamer. If you've played a MOBA, these can be compared to the junglers or gankers. They get value from forcing momentum around the map rather than staying in one place for too long, which makes them less predictable. In Guild Wars 2, roamers mostly focus on ganking or providing kills for their team so their teammates can secure objectives much more easily. They have burst damage and mobility to get the job done quickly and efficiently, and if things go poorly, they usually can escape and get things done elsewhere instead of dying. Unlike supports and duelists, they cannot sustain fights very long. They gain their sustain mostly through avoidance and positioning, rather than through healing and mitigation. For this reason, they usually can't take a lot of focus. They have decent odds of winning a 1v1 against a DPS or a support, but against a duelist, they'll struggle because roamers must kite off the node to survive, so they'll eventually give up the cap the longer the fight goes on, and a duelist will be able to waste the time of the roamer while holding the node. Instead, roamers prefer to play opportunistically by focusing low targets who are squishy, or with their team to get coordinated kills fast. The roamer is the most important role on your team if and only if your team has the other roles covered already. So what do I mean by this? A roamer is not optimal in any single situation. If you are 1v1ing, it would be better to have a duelist. Trying to get the enemy off a node? DPS. Trying to win a team fight? DPS or support. Trying to hold a node? Support or duelist. In almost every situation, it would be better to have another role. However, roamers get things done faster and can often perform multiple jobs in the same amount of time that the other classes perform one. In other words, roamers are the best for finishing or securing kills or objectives. They're like having a 6th player even though you only have 5, because they can respond to the needs of your team so quickly and be in so many places around the map. So why not have a team full of roamers and they can just get more things done around the map than the other team? It's not that easy to do. If you win fights rapidly by having a bunch of roamers, you will lose the nodes you've won just as rapidly because roamers can't hold nodes. Without a DPS to cleave the enemies they down or a support to prevent the enemy roamers from having a field day with your squishy comp, yeah, they're gonna struggle. Roamers and supports counter each other because supports prolong fights that roamers cannot sustain through, but also roamers have burst damage to end fights before a support can react. Roamers work well with duelists because a duelist can fight outnumbered while a roamer tries to +1 other fights. Matching numbers is when you try to rotate an appropriate number of players into a fight so as not to invest too little or invest too much into it, like a 2v2 or 3v3 for example. +1ing is to over-invest into a fight by 2v1ing or 3v2ing. Of course you expect to win a 2v1 or a 3v2, but because there are 5 players on their team as well, if you invest more into a fight than them, they're investing that elsewhere. You may win your 2v1, but your team will probably lose the 1v2 on the other side of the map. So rather than fighting around winning or losing fights, in these situations, players will be playing to stall and lose as slowly as possible when they are outnumbered by their enemy and play as aggressively as possible to win faster when they are outnumbering their enemy. If you manage to win your 2v1 faster than the enemy, you can then progress into other fights that will favor you because the enemy is off the map while they are dead, and you can gain successive advantages off of prior kills, essentially resulting in a snowball effect where you are outnumbering the enemy, but you are not outnumbered elsewhere as a result. Because 2v1s are almost guaranteed victories, a roamer doesn't need to worry so much about their lack of sustain, because the enemy will be so pressured that they can't fully respond to the attack. Of course, roamers will need to be careful because they can still die while 2v1ing, which is not only a massive waste of time, but very demoralizing to your team. But the risk of playing that recklessly is necessary sometimes to get the kill as fast as possible. Also, if you 2v1 someone, it's best to do it while they're low on cooldowns. If you push a 2v1 immediately, then the enemy will ration out their cooldowns and positioning very carefully to waste the roamer's time. But if you come into an already existing 1v1 without them expecting it, you can often get kills on players who aren't prepared. Of course, this will highly depend on your ability to scout out your team and your enemy team's builds, roles, and even sub-roles. If you're a roamer trying to +1 a druid, which is one of the duelists who provide the least amount of pressure and kill potential, you'll likely waste your time. However, if the enemy duelist you are +1ing is low sustain, such as a mesmer, or doesn't handle being locked down while outnumbered like an elementalist, it may still be a very valuable situation. Even though the job of a roamer is the most complicated and rotations are more important for them than any other role, let's try to explain some of the priorities of a roamer. Also, remember that the situation may change very rapidly for a roamer because of their high momentum and low sustain, so they'll need to react to these priorities much more frequently. So, first of all, you don't want to die, and then next is get kills. Then the third priority is keep your team alive, then it's stand on nodes, and finally it's keep moving. The way that roamers perform best is by moving around the map. So if a priority cannot be achieved, the answer is usually to move on to another location. So we could say that a fifth priority exists to keep moving, but it isn't really the lowest priority, it's more of like an answer in between every priority. Dying as a roamer is very detrimental to your team because while you are in the down state, you are much less mobile, and while you are on respawn, you're doing nothing for 15 seconds. A roamer gets so much done in so little time that being dead wastes much more time as a roamer than any other role. Because roamers get a lot of their sustain from getting out of combat, this often means leaving a fight and going to another may be the right play, not because one fight is more important than the other, but because the health gained from leaving combat is so hard to get without a support. If the situation is not immediately life-threatening, you should be focusing on kills over anything else. A kill for your team is so valuable because a roamer is less valuable than any other role at winning objectives, so by removing enemy roles from the map by killing them, improves that matchup not only for your team, but also for you. Also, roamers are built to get kills easily, so in many situations they may be giving up objectives by kiting off of nodes they would otherwise die on. So to get the kill and to survive, they need to play around the perimeter of fights. Next is to keep your team alive. Even though a roamer doesn't provide a lot in bigger fights, they can still provide their allies presence by grabbing attention since roamers are high priority targets in larger fights. But there isn't much you can do as a roamer to salvage a losing fight because of your low sustain. It is usually better to leave than to risk dying with your team. Because roamers are so mobile, they can disengage from lost fights and decapture nodes in other places. You can turn a losing fight into a good situation because you stall the enemy by making them recapture their nodes, which can sometimes take longer than the time it takes your team to regroup and win the next objective, thus allowing your team momentum to recapture the nodes where you just lost them. Because capturing a node is significantly longer than decapturing a node, it is not worth it to fully capture a node if you can't defend it, or if the enemy is free to come there soon. For example, if the secondary objective is coming up in 30 seconds and you need to be there right when it happens, so you don't want to start another fight that you can't finish, capping a node may be valuable since the enemy must decide between taking your node or contesting the secondary objective. This is the idea of zoning. Zoning is more abstractly to control the opponent's behavior through the threat of things you could potentially do. So by holding an enemy at one objective because they don't want you to take that one, you are preventing them from going to the other objective, essentially defending your node. In the context of two teams where 4 from each team are locked in a team fight at middle, and there's an extra duelist on one team and a roamer on the other team. Those 4 players won't leave middle, so it's just a roamer and a duelist fighting over the other 2 points. The team fight is stalled in a 4v4, but if either the roamer or the duelist enter the team fight to make it a 5v4, they can eventually swing the team fight. But if they both enter the team fight, it is essentially another stalled situation. So what does the roamer do in this situation? They can go to the node that the duelist isn't at and try to cap nodes faster than them, but that is a lot of wasted time, and the duelist could just decapture the nodes immediately if they just chase the roamer around, since the roamer can't really fight on node, and the extra speed that the roamer has would be negated by the fact that it's faster to decap than to full cap. In this case, they can understand that the duelist's priority is to capture and hold a side node before it is to go into the team fight. So the roamer can sit in the team fight and slowly gain presence for their team, even though they can't provide that much while the enemy duelist is capping nodes. Then, after the duelist starts to head into middle, the roamer can go to decapture the node of the duelist, because if they stay in this mid fight, it will stall. This is a big assumption here that it will stall, but if you think you can get kills, stay there and get them, but assuming that it stalls 5v5, you can go to decapture the duelist node while they are team fighting, and return back to middle to grant your team presence in the fight again. If the duelist stays, then your team will get pressured, but since a roamer can return very quickly, it won't be that long to make a huge difference, especially if the roamer can time it during their cooldowns or when they need to get out of combat to heal. However, if the duelist wants to hold their node, they will go back and try to prevent it from being decaptured or recapture it. During this time, the roamer can be heading back towards middle to gain the 5v4 advantage for their team. Then when the duelist re-enters the team fight, the roamer can go back to decapturing the enemy node. The more this situation occurs, the more time the roamer spends in the team fight, because the duelist is getting caught up, traveling and standing still a lot, while the roamer is moving quickly and using their burst combos and the little time that they're spending in those team fights. So while the roamer may be getting value out of the time in the mid fight, the duelist may not. This is a very simplistic scenario of zoning that happens often, but there are many ways a duelist can play around it, such as ignoring the roamer, or just pressuring the team fight as hard as they can, or instead of capturing their node, they can go to decap the node on the other side of the map, which allows them more leverage as a duelist. You can also zone a support/DPS combo as a roamer if the enemy support knows you want to kill their DPS. You can make movements that show the intention of +1ing a certain area, and the support will move in that direction to even up the fight to help their team. But you can use stealth, ports, or any other kind of mind games to go in another direction. Now that the enemy support is helping their DPS try to kill your duelist because they thought it would be a favorable 2v2 of DPS support versus roamer duelist, but instead they're wasting time as the duelist can play safely while you as the roamer get kills as their support has been zoned into a place they don't need to be. Some people misunderstand the role of a roamer and think that the highest priority is getting these decaptures, but it really is just a means to an end. the end being to get kills and objectives for your team and progressing the map. If you can get that done by just killing your opponent, then that would be much more efficient use of your time. If you can't get the kill, however, because the enemy team has too much synergy while together, or you are mechanically a potato, or your team can't focus targets, then decapping can be an answer to splitting them and creating situations where you can get isolated kills and then gain momentum. Building a roamer is all about having burst damage and mobility in both directions, meaning to engage and to disengage. Power builds with the Berserker or Marauder amulet have the best burst, but condition builds can also do burst and roam a little bit. Burst damage also needs to have some form of combo or instantaneous factor to it. Obviously, your arrival in a fight will give the tell that you will be bursting soon, but saving that damage for the right moment can help to secure kills. That damage not only needs to be fast to get your kill in time, but also so you can get out if things don't work out. You need to invest in a lot of damage modifiers to be able to burst well, so you can't afford much sustain. The less sustain your build has, the more you want to kite and be patient, but the more sustain it has, the more aggressive you can be, so in a way, you don't want to be pure glass cannon or you'll end up having less presence because you have to be out of fights more than you're in them. Roamers are also considered the playmakers of their team, and the most clutch moments where you can provide to your team revolves around the down state. If you can secure stomps or reses with stealth, invulnerability, or instant cast skills, even if you don't have sustain, you can swing losing fights in your favor. So you'll want burst damage, disengage potential, chasing potential, or range damage, a little bit of sustain through cleansing and evades, and some powerful skills that can be provided to your teammates in less selfish situations when you do pop into those large team fights. Roamers don't do much damage at the end of the match, but because they have burst damage, they can often get kills before the enemy can react, and the longer it takes for you to get a kill, the more time you give them to resustain, and therefore the more damage that is necessary to get the kill. So in a way, roamers do very little damage but are efficient with their damage. The first build I'm going to show is what you typically think of when you think of a roamer. This is the core sword dagger thief, and there is a daredevil version, but that's more of a teamfight oriented build because you have the short range swipe and you have dash, whereas the core sword dagger has the longer range steal and more self survivability with acrobatics, so it's a little bit better for rotations and surviving. So the core version will take Marauder amulet with the eagle rune, sword dagger with compounding and exploitation, and then energy cleansing on the shortbow. You have a lot of mobility on this build. It's insane because of the sword 2. You have shadow step, goes to a location 1200 range and then back with a double stun break. You have the steel is 1200 range, and you also have the shortbow 5. So there's a lot of mobility for chasing kills, but also for disengaging from fights. And the sword 2 infiltrator strike is super important to get used to and knowing how to abuse it, because what it will do is it will port you towards the target and immobilize them, but then it will leave a return location, and within 15 seconds you can recast the infiltrator strike and return to the original location within 1200 range. So you can basically go aggressive in team fights, and as long as you can cast your infiltrator's return, so long as you don't get CC'd and don't have any stun breaks, you can just return back to your original spot. And if you're really good at placing them like off of the side or in like safe locations, you can usually escape from a fight. And the difference between a novice SD thief and an expert one is that an expert one will always remember where their infiltrator return is, and when they're kiting enemies, they'll usually do it away from their return spot so that when they do return, they get a lot more value from the distance they travel. The build also has a decent amount of sustain for a roaming build because of the acrobatics trait line and the deadly arts trait line. You have a lot of evades with the increased vigor from acrobatics, so your vigor will give you 75% effectiveness instead of 50% effectiveness of your recharge. So vigor is really good, and you have permanent vigor pretty much on this build. So you have a lot of dodges, and your heal skill and roll for initiative and flanking strike and shortbow 3 are all evades. So there's a lot of evasion to survive on this build. You also have Mug, which will heal you whenever you land steal, and Improvisation, which will randomly recharge one of your 3 utility skills, and all of your utility skills have a lot of versatility to them. So getting them on lower cooldowns gives you a lot of options. There's also Assassin's Reward, which will heal you for 100 for each point of initiative that you use. So it's a lot of healing over time, and it's very reliable because if you're out of a fight and you've got like conditions on you and you're trying to just rotate or trying to even evade, you're gaining health back. So it's really good for the sustain of the build to be active while also giving yourself healing. Also in the acrobatics trait line, you will have pain response, which will give you a little bit of your Condi cleansing. So every 60 seconds, you'll gain 10 seconds of regeneration, and you'll remove damaging conditions, which is nice because even though you have a lot of evasion on this build, you are in melee range and you get hit by quite a bit of conditions. You also have condition cleanse on the Infiltrator Return, which will cleanse 1 condition, and you have Signet of Agility, which will cleanse 3 conditions, and that can even be recharged by Improvisation. You also have a cleansing sigil here, so there's a decent amount of Condi cleanse on this build. Now the damage of this build is very important because a roamer needs burst damage. So how this build does most of its damage is actually through the Dagger 5. It's not the hardest hitting ability, but what it will do is it will give 5 vulnerability to the target and then allow you to use Tactical Strike because your sneak attack is when you're in stealth, and that will give 10 vulnerability. So combine those 2 abilities, you put 15 vulnerability on your target, and that's when you can start doing a lot of damage. And because vulnerability is really good for your team as well, and the role of a roamer is usually not to be solo but to be attacking with their team, that vulnerability really helps your team to focus targets. And once you've gotten the vulnerability on the target, you can do Flanking Strike, which will also lead into Larcenous Strike if you land it. And the Flanking and Larcenous are both unblockable, but Larcenous will hit very hard and steal 2 boons, and if they have no boons on them, then it will do 20% more damage. So it's a pretty insane skill when combined with your steal because you have Bountiful Theft. So a lot of the times what you'll do is you'll Flanking Strike, and then you'll wait for the enemy to dodge because they usually want to avoid the Larcenous Strike that will happen right after the Flanking Strike. And you'll just attack a little bit, or maybe just use your auto attack really. And then as soon as you see them dodge, you can use your Larcenous Strike, which will be queued up, into a steal, and that will steal 4 boons, and if it steals all their boons, then it will do a lot of extra damage. So that's one of the ways that you want to be doing your burst combos on people. So generally the combo that you'll do is you'll Infiltrator Strike, and then while they're immobilized, you can Cloak and Dagger into Tactical Strike, and then they might dodge probably after that. So you'll probably want to precast Larcenous Strike into their dodges, or try to evade something with Larcenous Strike. And then once you're ready to go for the burst, you'll Larcenous Strike into your steal, or you can just do Cloak and Dagger into steal, and then Tactical Strike into your Larcenous. So pretty much the burst is all around the 3, the 5, and the steal skill. You can also, in between your steal rotations, go into the Shortbow and just use Cluster Bombs and Kite while you're waiting for your steal, which will allow you those burst combos. So in this match, I have a bunch of duelists and supports, and not a lot of damage other than a Reaper, and none of my team wants to go home, so I'm not going to go home as a thief because that's just not going to work out if I have to duel something. So I go into far, I get a little bit of a steal on their necro just so I can get the stolen ability and then use that in a fight that I'm going to look for. So eventually my ranger does decide to go into home, and that's good because I want to be +1ing them, and I see that they have a mini necro, so yeah, I can just spam the 5 into 1 combo on them and just use the fear, and yeah, that's going to get the kill very easily because they don't have any stun breaks, and I get a nice immobilize from my druid as well, and I use my shadow step there so that I can land my tactical strike, which will secure the kill, because if I didn't do that, then it would take probably another 5 seconds to get the kill on the necro, and in that time they would probably use something or get some sort of heal that would allow them to survive even longer. So yeah, securing kills by playing very aggressively is super important. Now at mid, our whole team is wiped, probably because they were outnumbered because I was +1ing at home, but unfortunately we're gonna have to deal with that. So I'm now kiting out. We have home though, so that's not terrible, but yeah, we are kind of at a disadvantage here. My team is respawning and we are regrouping at home, and this is actually a pretty good situation now because we're getting kills after we just lost the fight, so we're regaining momentum. But my support Tempest, so we've got actually 2 supports this game. We've got a support Tempest and I think a support Spellbreaker. They're kind of getting trained down. I don't really have any counter pressure to help them because I'm a roamer, not a DPS. So instead I leave them to die and I go into mid to try to kill their core necro. I dodge the weakness from whenever they enter Shroud so that I can get the kill as fast as possible. Because if I ignore their damage, then I take more pressure, I take more weakness, and that makes me do less damage. So dodging and playing somewhat safe sometimes gets you the kill faster. And here we're in like a 2v3 because we're outnumbered from our Ellie dying, but we are going to have enough cleave here because I stole to the warrior, and the warrior stolen ability gives you a lot of AoE damage for you to cleave with. So yeah, we're actually going to get the kill here and rally my warrior here and chase this thief here, and I think they're going to die. We get the kill on the thief as well, so that's pretty good. I don't want to go into far because our home node hasn't been won yet, and I can actually get kills for my team, whereas if I go to far, I'm not progressing the map for my team, I'm just stalling it. Now my Necromancer does die, so we are kind of in a bad situation. We do need to stay at mid, but we also need to find a side node for our team to be able to hold, because we can't just win with one node. So I do see that the top buff is spawning soon, so I go for a decap on far, and then I'm going to immediately port back for the buff. Now I steal to the thief so I can get the stealth, and hopefully they don't realize that the buff is up and I can get it in stealth. However, the enemy core necro is here as well, and I can't really do much about that. So I get feared, and I'm pretty much out of cooldown here, and I lose target on the necro, so I can't steal to them, and I just die to the thief. So this is a really bad situation because they've got 2 caps, and they're also going to get the top buff, which means that's a 4 cap. Our team is getting kills at mid in a 4v3, but it's not really going to give us too much for that because the enemy has a 4 cap. Now, if we can get some decaps on the nodes, that's probably the highest priority right now because they've got the top buff, which is giving them double the value of their nodes. I do see that their core necro is a little bit low on mid, and yes, while my warrior can't really provide me too much to get the kill here, I still want to kind of pressure them because it's the only thing that I see available on the map right now, and if I get a kill here, maybe that can create momentum elsewhere on the map. So I am chasing the kill. They go into Lich form, so to peel for my team I have to steal into this Lich form, and I'm just trying as hard as I can to counter pressure it, and that forces them to leave the Lich and go into Shroud. But my team is really not figuring out where we want to be. Like, my Reaper is probably the last person we want to be going to side nodes. My druid, yeah, that's kind of an okay side noder, but they're also losing to the necro, so I'm just staying here getting kills with my team. And yeah, it's looking like a lost match at this point. So we get the fear on this warrior here. I get the stolen ability, which is pretty important because that'll be useful for later. A lot of times you don't actually steal to someone because you're trying to get the stolen ability. You're actually trying to just get the kill on them, right? But in a lot of cases, the steal can be very good. So sometimes you do want to just steal to someone just for the stolen ability, but not really too often. So yeah, we're outnumbered here, and I have to play very safely here. My support is coming in, so I get a little bit of a heal there. But in reality, playing with two supports there is not really going to get us anything done. So I need to go too far where my necro is and help them, but I see that the buffs are coming up in 15 seconds, so I really need to go there instead of trying to progress the map because the buffs are really important on this map. Now I see that my necro is at bottom, and that means that I can get the top buff, which is pretty good. However, the enemy core guardian appears just in time to prevent me from getting that, so at this point my team is at the bottom buff, which is actually one of the first good places they can be because they have such a heavy team fight comp, and the enemy team, well, they're not so much into team fighting. They're not really any support on their team. They have a lot of damage, but not a lot of support. So yeah, I'm trying to juke this core guardian here to try to get the buff from them, but yeah, guardian is not a good matchup for me, even though this is kind of like a burn guardian. Yeah, it's a very tanky version of the burn guardian, so I am pretty good though on cooldowns. I just want to be careful around the burn. As soon as I get, you know, that really long duration burn there, I'm going to probably use my signet, and yeah, I'm going to play very safely here though. Yeah, I can't get the buff, so at this point I should probably just leave because I have no cooldowns, but if I give them the top buff, then that's going to be really hard. So yeah, I think I was trying to go for a decap here, but the guardian was actually chasing, and yeah, he's chasing very hard, and that's actually a good play because if he can get the kill on me, then he can get the buff as well. Now I try to stall as long as I can and steal to the guardian. I get a really good cleanse, but I get immobilized here, and that's going to spell my doom, so that is very unfortunate. However, our team is actually doing pretty good at bottom buff. There's 4 of them there, and the rest of their team is kind of like capping the rest of the map. But if my team can win bottom, I can actually play top because it's like a 1v1 at top because I have all the mobility I want and I'm just playing around the guardian. So I don't actually need to fight the guardian. I can just go around decapping nodes. So at the moment, the guardian is at mid, and actually I'm going to +1. So my necro had died at bottom, and that means I can actually +1 this at mid. I don't really want to cap nodes because, well, I'm actually going to go cap a node right now, I think. Yeah, I think I need to go cap this node because my necro has an advantage in that 1v1 at that point. But they actually swap my, really weird rotations this match. They swap the support guardian into hold mid, which is actually pretty good because now the necro goes into bottom and they can get kills there. But see, they're outnumbered at bottom. So they're doing God's work right now and surviving outnumbered at bottom. And we have far and home, so I'm actually going to get the top buff while this is happening. So we're getting a 4 cap now, and we're just stalling them outnumbered at bottom and stalling most of their damage because their burn guard is most of their damage in a 1v1. Now, someone goes to decap home, so we don't have a 4 cap anymore, but we're still in a pretty good situation because we're gaining more presence on the map than the enemy team is, and they're not really progressing any kills. So this is pretty good for us. We're kind of like getting kills at bottom, and that gives us time to get the +1 on mid, And if that happens, then my support warrior can actually hold the mid node for quite a bit. And now I'm playing around their thief, but we've captured bottom, so now they're going to decapture far, right? Because they just got knocked off the node, they're going to get back on. And now I want to hold a 1v1 against the thief so that they can't fully cap the node. So I go into far, and this is a losing matchup for me because it is sword dagger thief versus dagger pistol thief. They can just spam their shadow shot on me, and unless I'm like Daredevil where I have the Condi Cleanse on dodge, it's really hard for me to deal with that. So both of us miss steal, but it's still a pretty unfavorable matchup. I shadow step out because I'm low on cooldowns, but I land a really good cloak and dagger into steal here. So I'm actually in a pretty good position here, and actually get stolen into here with Heartseeker, but I'm getting healed by my team, and that's going to allow us to get the kill. Their thief basically has no cooldowns, so at this point, normally I would let the support leave and go help our team, but we have two supports, so it's actually better for one of our supports to sort of play as a side noder because we own the map. So our support warrior can hold mid, our support Ellie can hold far, and then we can go with our Necro and try to like get kills at home to, if not just hold the node, just to keep the enemy from holding it. So we are coming back. We now have a lead in the match, but our Necro is dead. So the only thing I really need to do at this point is just survive, because if our Ellie survives at far and our warrior survives at mid and most of their damage is at our home, that pretty much means, yeah, there's no way that they can die. I mean, the Ellie got pushed off of far, which is not good, but we have enough of a lead that we can just hold mid and we will win with that. So yeah, that's just kind of like one of the matches that is really proof that you should never ever give up. So yeah, we're pretty much gonna win at this point because even with a 2 cap, they don't win. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to split their team further. Both our supports should stay at mid because they just need to hold one node, and all I need to do is just keep pressuring or zoning the enemy with the potential of decapping them, because they'll lose if they lose their decap, right? So we don't want them to go into mid and kill our team, but they don't want to lose their cap. And I also need to just stall the top up, because if they got that, then they would have won as well with a 4 cap. So we actually get the win there because of my team actually doing their jobs pretty well once we finally figured out how to get ourselves on the map, and I played around zoning the enemy properly. Here's another very standard roamer build. This is a power Mirage. The idea of Mirage is that your dodge is no animation, and it gives you the ability to use an ambush skill after you use your dodge, which can have very powerful effects. Now this build uses the Berserker amulet with the resistance rune because there is so much distortion and evasion in this build that you want to be doing as much damage as possible while you're invulnerable. You'll be taking the sword and pistol with energy cleansing and Greatsword with energy cleansing as well. So how you get your mobility to allow you to be a roamer on this build is through a lot of ports. You have Blink, which is the 1200 range stun break on a 35-second cooldown, one of the strongest ports in the game. And then you have Jaunt, which is your elite skill, which gives you a shorter 450 range port with 2 count recharge. And then you have your illusionary ambush, which will randomly teleport you around your target, which helps you to chase, but also just to be elusive and to give you more time while pressuring a target. And then you've also got your sword 3, which you can use on a target, and then you will swap places with the clone. It's just so good for locking down targets with the immobilize, and also juking by leaving the clone on someone who's chasing you, and then taking the clone and swapping with it while it's behind them. You've also got the ambush skill, so whenever you dodge you can use Mirage Thrust, and that is a leap, so you gain a lot of mobility from using the ambush with the leap. Now Mirages only have 1 dodge, but that doesn't mean that they only have 1 evade. there are many ways for you to avoid damage on a Mirage. So you have your dodge, you have your sword 2, which is a 10-second cooldown, which is a 1-second evade. You have illusionary ambush, which is another evade, but it also will reposition and break targeting, which is like a 0.1 second stealth. So it makes it very hard for enemies to find which one is you. And then you have mirrors on your heal skill. Whenever you pick up a mirror, you will gain Mirage Cloak, and that counts as an evade. And you will also have Distortion, which gives you up to 4 seconds of invulnerability, depending on how many clones you have, and that's very powerful. And you will also create mirrors because of the Desert Distortion trait, based on how many clones you distort with. So you can get 4 seconds of invuln, and then you can get 3 Mirage mirrors, which will give you 3 more dodges, which will also give you ambushes. So there's a lot of synergy with the distortion on this build, and because of that you can avoid damage and be sort of like invulnerable while also being this like heavy damage roamer. So it's not very interactive, and that's why it's so hard to deal with. While this build does have a lot of evasion, it does lack sustain. The heal skill is pretty good, but there's really no other healing on this build other than whenever you gain your Mirage Cloak, you'll gain a little bit of regeneration. And there's not much cleanse on this build as well. So the only real ways you can cleanse are by swapping your weapons, by going invulnerable from distortion and just not taking damage from the conditions that you have on you. And I also have the Rune of Resistance. Whenever you use your elite skill Jaunt, you will gain resistance for 4 seconds, which is pretty good. It's on an internal cooldown of 45, and the count recharge of Jaunt is 30 seconds. So it's pretty good for surviving until you can get into your distortion, or just until you can get away. And you do have a little bit of Condi duration reduction on the Rune of Resistance, as well as the Renewing Oasis, so conditions just kind of fall off of you eventually. So how the build does its damage is mostly through clones, and then the Infinite Horizon trait plus shatters. So how it works is, whenever you dodge because of Deceptive Evasion, you'll create a clone, and then your Mirage Thrust will also create a clone. So every time you dodge and use your Sword Ambush, you'll create 2 clones, and that gives you a lot of clone generation. And Infinite Horizon will make your clones use ambushes too. They're not as strong as yours. Now the Mirage Thrust does a pretty good base damage, but the clones will also daze, and if they daze, they can proc Power Block, which whenever you interrupt someone, it'll do a lot of damage. It can't crit, but the base damage is really high, and it will increase the cooldown of the skill that you interrupted from a 4-second interrupt cooldown to a 15-second, which means they're pretty screwed. So you can do a lot of damage from interrupting people with your Diversion. You have Magic Bullet, you have your Mirage Thrust, you also have your Greatsword 5, which will knock back. So there's a lot of ways to get damage from the power block and lock someone down, while you also have a lot of damage from that because you have Fragility, which whenever you have vulnerability on your target, that vulnerability gives you 50% more effectiveness. So if you have 2 stacks of vulnerability, instead of doing 2% of damage, you are doing 3%. And whenever you daze someone, you will also put 5 vulnerability on them. So whenever you're interrupting someone, you're doing a lot of damage with power block, and also enabling your damage combos to do more. So the pure damage that comes from this build is mostly from the Phantasmal Berserker, which is going to give you 2 phantasms that do a lot of damage, and then they'll turn into 2 clones, so really good clone generation there. And then they will ambush when you use your dodges. So you want to use your Phantasmal Berserker into your Mirror Blade, and then once the Phantasmal Berserkers turn into clones, you want to wait until they finish their attack and become clones, so that you can dodge with Infinite Horizon, and then your clones will use your Split Surge. Now they won't do as much damage, but they will put a decent, it's like 1k-ish damage per clone, and then they'll also all put vulnerability on the target, so you can easily get to 25 vuln on your target and just do tons of damage. And how Split Surge works is it hits like 3 beams at adjacent targets, but if all those targets are on top of each other, those beams will all pierce the same target, doing triple the damage. So it's just insane in teamfight situations, and it'll also give you might whenever you use it. So you want to be using your dodge and your ambushes a lot while you have your clones out, and then right as your clones finish their ambush skill, you'll want to shatter those clones and then create more clones and then do the ambush and then shatter again. You can kind of like get this rotation of clone generation, ambush, shatter, and that's pretty much how the build does its damage. So the main combo that you'll be doing is your Phantasmal Berserker, and then you will auto attack maybe a little bit with Mind Stab, or you'll wait a little bit and then you'll Mirror Blade. Mirror Blade will give vulnerability and might, just like Spatial Surge. So you'll want to do that in melee range because it bounces from you and the target, so it'll give more damage and more might the more it bounces between you and the target. And then you'll have 3 clones, and what you'll want to do is you'll want to ambush so that you can do a Split Surge, get more might and more vulnerability on the target, and then you want to use Mind Rack and shatter all of those clones for a lot of damage. So the main combo is 4, 2, dodge, 1, F1. You also have the sword. Sword is actually your highest sustain damage because it has so much evasion in the set, and your ambushes also kind of like peel for you because they daze. So you kind of just sit on targets most of the time with your sword set, and what you'll do is you'll immobilize them and then you'll do your ambush into them so that they're dazed while immobilized. You can use your Phantasmal Duelist, and you usually want to save your Magic Bullet so that you can do a Magic Bullet into Greatsword 2, dodge, and then F1. So in this match, there isn't a lot of support on my team. It's pretty much just all damage, so we're lacking support, which is really good for a Mesmer because Mesmers already are low in sustain. So I'm going to have to really watch my positioning and rotate well to make up for this lack of support that I have. So there's a Core Guardian, this is a Burn Guardian on me, and I have to immediately use my resistance rune there or I will die to all those burns. I Illusionary Ambush back up, and I try to pressure with a little bit of my ambushes, but my clones instantly die, which is kind of one of the reasons why Mesmers are so weak in team fights, is because their clones just instantly die to all the AoE. So I use my distortion here, but I can't really get any value off of my Mirage mirrors because I can't stay in there long enough. So I leave. I use my Signet of Illusions so I can distort all of the burn on me because I can't really survive long enough. And yeah, at this point I'll probably just die to the Retail. So we actually get the down from the burns of my Guardian, but I can't really cleave this because I'm just too low. I'll go down as well. But I go in to try for it anyways because I have Diversion up, which can give me a lot of my cooldowns back because of the dueling traits. But I get burned and die because my teammate I think they were just capping the node while I was trying to cleave. So if they could have helped me there, that would have been a lot better, but they lacked awareness, and because of that we are going to have to respawn. So we're capping home, and we've actually got a kill at mid, so it's not a terrible positioning, but I do want to probably not go to mid again because those team fights didn't really work out for me. So I want to be going into smaller fights. So I see that my Ranger goes to far. Now maybe I want to go to far too and go for a kill on this Engineer. So the Engineer just used their block, which means I can get a lot of burst on them, but they have stability it looks like, and they are immune and just running away with super speed. So I basically zoned their Engineer off of their 1v1 because they don't want to die. So we go into mid now at this point. My teammate actually got a kill, so that's really good. And the warrior is going to vengeance there, but you don't have to worry about that. We can just decap this node, and I will actually full cap the node as well because well, actually my teammate just died at far. That's kind of interesting. So I'm just capping the node while fighting that Vengeance Warrior. And we actually get a kill here, but their Guardian is coming in. So I want to pressure their Guardian so that he can't prevent my ally from getting that down. And even we have a down Ranger, which they're going to struggle to cleave the down Ranger if I'm pressuring them. But it's a Burn Guardian, so they're going to get it anyways. So now I'm in a 1v1, and this is a very favorable 1v1 because Burn Guardian, or whatever kind of DH this is not really very good versus Mesmers. Even though I'm not a duelist, neither are they. So I go into, I'm going to have to go into Distort there, but yeah, I'm getting +1, and now here I'm doing a really good cleave with my sword. I do an interrupt with the ambush, and I have to be very careful, so I Signet of Illusions, and I'm going to Distort to try to, yeah, I'm going to juke around here with Illusionary Ambush and Blink, and I'm going to Distort now just to finish off the DH, get some of my mirrors, and then get out of there with my heal skill and do a little bit of juking here with the Sword 3. Now I've got a mirror, I can dodge with that, and I'm going to use my actual dodge and just get out. So really good kiting by me to hold that 1v2 kind of situation, but it's now a 2v3. Actually, it's going to be evened up, so yeah, we've actually gotten stuff done on the rest of the map because I was outnumbered and cleaved that pretty well. But yeah, my sustain is not very high, so it was very dangerous to play like that. So at this point, I am 1v1ing a Core Guardian, and it's actually a favorable matchup. We've also got a +1 here as well, so this is really, really good for us because our team kind of lacks the team fighting ability. So if we're able to get sides, then that's what we want to do. And while I don't really want to be the duelist of our team, the enemy team doesn't really have any duelists, so it's, you know, I want to be moving around the map, but if no one else will do it, then it's better that I do it than no one. So I'm going to be forced to 1v1 this Core Guardian again. So I push them before they get to the node, because as soon as they get to the node, they have an advantage because they're a Burn Guardian. And basically I baited out both their dodges and a lot of their cooldowns before they even get to the node. So by the time they do get to the node, I can fight on the node because they've got no cooldown basically. So I use my Distort to do a lot of damage, and yeah, I just burst them down before they can really react. So I hold the node because while I did Distort while on the node, I didn't, well, I almost lose the node there, but yeah, I didn't lose the node because I did most of that encounter off node. So that's one thing you want to do as a roamer, is you want to force fights off of nodes, because then you have an advantage there. So now a Ranger is going to be coming in here, and this isn't really a good matchup for me at all. So I'm going to be pressuring them a little bit, but yeah, as soon as I see that Guardian coming in, I'm going to pretty much leave and yeah, head into mid and look for more kills for my team, because even though I can't hold far, maybe I can win their fights for them, and then they can come help me at far. So yeah, my Guardian's really low here. I'm going to try to peel for them with my ambushes and a little bit of CC. So yeah, the Guardian is going to immediately use their elite there because they know that I have a lot of damage. They've experienced that before. I do a really big ambush there for like a quarter of their health, and then they dodge my Mirror Blade, but yeah, they're trying to stand on node greedily and they get punished for that. Here I have probably to use my Signet of Illusions so that I can survive if I need to use Distortion. But yeah, we actually get the cleave here pretty well. I'm getting a lot of stuns and dazes on this Ranger, so we're really preventing them from doing much. And now I'm going to chase them for the kill, because even if I don't get the kill, my teammate is capping the node, and if I'm pressuring them off the node, then my teammates can do their job. So this is pretty good. We get the down here, and I'm actually going to stomp this probably. Yeah, their Guardian uses Dragon's Maw on me, but I have the cleave here, and at this point we can actually play super aggressively on this Guardian because we know that they don't have many cooldowns too. And yeah, this build just has so much burst damage that if you catch people who are squishy, like dragon hunters that have no stun breaks, then yeah, you can do a lot of damage and get some kills. So at this point, I am pushing into mid, and we see that they have a support guardian and a burn guardian, or sorry, a support warrior. But they're probably, maybe they could res this guy here. So I go to cleave this out as fast as possible. And yeah, we see that their guardian is really low too. So I'm just going to pressure into that and use all of my pistol abilities. I do have to be careful though, because I don't have any of my Condi Cleanse up or distorts. So even though I am 2v1ing this, it's a very dangerous situation. Looks like they rally or something off of one of our teammates. But yeah, we're gonna go for the kill on this warrior anyways, because that's what my teammates are on. It doesn't matter what the right target is, it matters what you can get a kill on, because if your teammates are killing something, then you're gonna have a better chance of killing it if you're on it too, than if you both attack different targets. And even if it's bad for you to be on that target, it can become good because when you kill someone, then you can outnumber the other one. So yeah, I distort there, and we just do a lot of cleave. Like you can just see like all the numbers here, it's insane. So we get a lot of damage there, and I have to be very careful, even though, yeah, we actually just get all the kills there, so I don't have to be careful. We just killed, I think, like 4 players. So I'm going to go immediately to far to get the decap, so that the enemy team has no choice but to push into their home node. They have to regroup at a home node that they don't even own. So it's just going to take them even longer to push out, because not only do they have to cap it again, but they have to get out all of our cooldowns and get us off the node first. So yeah, this is a very good situation for us right now. We pretty much progressed the map to a point where we can just win. And that's kind of how you want to play roamer. You don't want to be trying to like greed for holding nodes all the time. You want to be looking for a kind of like position to progress the map to a snowball, where your team just is at such a high momentum that the enemy team can't even play the objectives. And at that point, you pretty much won the game, because your team is able to do their job so easily, and then you can just do yours that much quicker, because if your team is just having a good time, then you can just kill whatever they're +1ing, or whatever you can +1 for them. So it's really important to get snowballs, more so than to greed for each and every little point, because as soon as you get that snowball rolling, well, then the points just come for free. So yeah, at this point we're going to try to get the kill on this guardian here, but probably not the best idea to 1v1 this, even though it's a very winnable 1v1 for me. But yeah, we just lost far. Now that was a really good play of my team to come in and get the kill with me and leave far, but we could have probably just stayed at far and let them have mid. It is arguable whether you want to play sides rather than home and mid. You could say that mid is more valuable than far, so this is maybe a better play than going into far. But yeah, either way, we played together and we coordinated together, whether or not that was my doing or not. And that is why we get the kills, right? So you always want to be going for coordinated plays when you're playing a roamer, because your burst damage is that much more efficient when the enemy team has already kind of like supplemental damage into them. So at this point, we pretty much won the game. We're going to maybe lose home, but we're going to get mid and get these kills. And yeah, we only need 40 points to win, and they need 140, so we can just zerg one node and win with that. So yeah, we get a lot of burst damage in this, like, what is this, 3v1 or 2v1. And at this point, I'm going to just zone anyone off the node so that my allies can get the capture. And that means I'm going to be just pushing out as far as possible and attacking anyone that gets near. So yeah, this is pretty much a one match, and that is the power Mirage. So you do have to watch out for thieves a lot on this build, but in that case you generally want to team fight more often with your supports, where the thief isn't as useful. This next build is going to be a little bit less disengage potential than the Thief or the Mesmer build. So when you are in situations where it's not a favorable situation, you're going to get punished harder, but at the cost of that, you will get a lot more damage, and you can finish off kills a lot easier, and it can be very snowbally if you get a kill and then you push through the map and progress kills non-stop with this build. So the idea is pretty much that you have the Soulbeast merge, and you have all these synergies with the merge that give you a ton of damage modifiers. You'll also have a lot of mobility on this build, even though it's not in the disengage kind of potential. So what you'll do is, when you're trying to disengage, usually you'll be merged with your pet because that gives you most of your stats and your abilities. But when you're being attacked by someone, you can unmerge, and when you unmerge with your pet, you can put out your smoke cloud, and when you unmerge it will also give you super speed, quickness, and a little bit of Condi cleanse. And then you can smoke cloud and then do your Greatsword 3 through that, and that'll give you stealth, but you got to make sure you do the final part of the swoop through it. So generally you want to be away from the smoke cloud and then leap into it, and then that will give you stealth and the ability to disengage. You can also do the swoop or the smoke cloud and then go into merge and then use worldly impact. So the smoke skill is really good for allowing this build to disengage. And to get a little bit more stealth, you can also use the Longbow 3. So stealth is very good for disengage, but you don't have the mobility to rotate as fast as a Mesmer or a Thief. So it's not going to be as effective as a pure roaming role, but you can also do a little bit of carrying in fights. You'll also have a decent amount of healing on this build with the Troll Ungent, which is one of the best heals in the game. It heals for like 8,000, and it'll cleanse 4 conditions because of Wilderness Knowledge, which gives you lesser muddy terrain, which is also a survival skill, so that's 4 Condi cleanse there. You've also got Condi cleanse on Quickening Zephyr and on merge and unmerge if it's within the 12-second ICD. So yeah, there's a decent amount of Condi cleanse on this build, and you also have Unstoppable Union and the Sigil of Escape, which is really nice. So yeah, this is Berserk Amulet with Divinity runes and Energy Escape on the Greatsword, and Separation and Exposure, because generally you want to be doing long range damage on your Longbow, and then you're kiting with your Greatsword, even though it can be used very aggressively as well. So for the sustain on this build, you have the healing of Troll Ungent, you have the protection you gain from Wilderness Survival, you have the protection that you gain from Unstoppable Union and from dodge rolling because of Wilderness Survival, and that will heal you as well, which is pretty nice. And yeah, you have a lot of cleanse as well. So you got protection and you've got cleansing on this build, so it's pretty decent survivability, even though you don't have a lot of disengage. So if you're outnumbered, then it's kind of hard to survive, but if you're in like an even fight, then it has pretty good survivability. How you deal damage on this build? Well, there's many ways to deal damage on this build. It just dishes out damage everywhere. So mainly you have Sic Em when you want to do your burst damage. You have to be merged when you use Sic Em to get the buff on yourself, because it gives it to your pet, and if you are your pet, then you get it. But you gain 25% more damage for 10 seconds. So that's very strong, and it will also reveal your target. So if you use Sic Em on someone, you're kind of giving them the tell that you're getting a huge damage boost, but it can also really destroy thieves because, you know, they can't go in stealth. So in a way, this build is countered by thieves, but also it counters thieves. So it's a pretty good pick for roamers. And yeah, you want to be using Sic Em while merged right before you're about to do your burst. And there are many ways that you can do your burst. So one way is you can do it with the Longbow. The Longbow burst kind of revolves around you point blank shotting them and then rapid firing them while they are CC'd there. And then there is the One Wolf Pack, which is good with rapid fire as well. So One Wolf Pack gives you a secondary hit with an ICD of 1/4 seconds, so it's really good with fast attacks. So rapid fire is a really fast attack, and It's also really good with Smoke Assault because that is also 5 hits, and if you use either Rapid Fire or Smoke Assault or even Barrage with one wolf pack, it pretty much gives you a lot of your burst. And then you can even put Sic Em on top of that. So putting one wolf pack, Sic Em, Rapid Fire, and Smoke Assault all on top of each other is very good for like your burst combos. And then while you're waiting for that to come up, you can do a lot of play around the Greatsword and the takedown ability. So while you're merged, you have a 2-second kick that'll knock down. You also have your Hilt Bash, which if you hit from behind is a stun, and then your damage is pretty much from Maul. And how you want to do like your Greatsword combos revolve kind of around Maul being a low cooldown, but also giving your next attack a 25% increase. So you have 2 abilities that do like 10 damage, pretty much. Like Hilt Bash kind of does okay damage, but it's not. You don't want to be using the Maul buff on one of those abilities, right? Because basically the Maul buff is given to you while you are merged, because it's trying to give it to its pet. But since you're merged, you get it. And so what you want to do with the Greatsword is you usually want to do like Maul, and that'll put the buff on you. And then you want to do either Swoop or Worldly Impact after you use Maul, because then you get the 25 boost on an ability that actually hits pretty hard. So generally what you'll do is you'll Maul into Swoop or Worldly Impact, and then you'll either try to get them CC'd again with a takedown, and then you can use Maul while they're CC'd. And then yeah, if you don't have any big attacks, then you can go into Hilt Bash, and that'll do a little bit more damage. But yeah, try not to waste your Maul buff on a CC ability. But also, you just have 2 weapon sets that have a lot of damage in them just in general. So you can follow through with your burst combo with another burst combo. So there's a lot of ways to just like secure kills on someone because they just don't have enough cooldowns to deal with all the damage that you can do. So I'm going to give myself the Siamoth F2 before I go into a fight, and you can actually get the plasma there. So I'm going to pick that up, and then I can use that before a fight begins. So normally you want to be using the Siamoth and then swap to Smoke Scale before you get into combat and merge. And here we're just looking for a good target. The enemy Necro is at full shroud there, but I am a Sic Em Ranger, so I'm not afraid to blow a lot of my damage into that. I do have, yeah, I have a lot of my damage here. I just one wolf pack and Sic Em into my rapid fire, but they get away with like 10% HP, and now I'm being chased by a Revenant. So I need to be very careful here. I swap into the Greatsword, I use the evade on the 3, and I can precast my takedown into the end of their sword 3, which is really good. So it allows me to counter pressure here and get the kill on this Revenant. At this point, I see that we are capping far. Our home is going to be a Renegade versus a Necro, so I probably want to decap mid and go to home. I may just full cap mid though, but as a roamer, it's not really a good idea to full capture a node. But because I don't really think that, well, actually they won at home, so I didn't really need to be there. So my greed actually ended up being good because I wasn't needed there anyways. But yeah, normally I'd want to get kills for my team, but yeah, it wasn't necessary, so it all worked out. Not because I rotated well, but because my teammates could win their fights in an even fight. So at this point, I am rapid fire. I just used my whole burst there, my longbow burst, into F2, and pretty much get 90% of the Revenant's HP out of the way. And yeah, we can just get this kill for our team. They get revived, and I land a really good hilt bash from behind, which stuns them, allowing me to maul again. So that's really good. And I'm not going to push into that 1v1 there. I will try to pressure the engineer there off the node before they come into the team fight, but yeah, I'm just zoning them a little bit, and then I immediately go to pressure mid and get the kill on their necromancer. So they do have their hollow chasing me here a little bit, so I have to be careful. But Yeah, there's 2 on me now, so I have to be super careful. I'm using my Longbow, or my Greatsword 4, and I'm unmerging here. I can probably use I could have used the lamp there, but I got immobilized right before I got in. I should have just kept kiting around the terrain instead of going for the lamp there. But my team was getting like a 3v1 at home, so they got the kill there, so now they can push into mid, and our thief is at far versus a revenant. He couldn't get the decap there, so at this point I want to go into mid and secure another kill. But I see that my Mesmer at home is getting pushed by a Necromancer 1v1, and this is not like a very survivable Mesmer build, so I'm coming here to help them, but I get pulled by the enemy Necro, and my Mesmer instantly dies, so I've pretty much given up on this fight, and I use one wolf pack into Sic Em, and I just delete the enemy Necro's health here. So yeah, it just shows how like much damage you do against classes who use mitigation or pure health rather than trying to evade, right? You have to evade a Sic Em Ranger's damage because it just does so much, which makes it really good versus Necromancers. So I go into mid, and I see that we're dying there as well. So the only node we have is far, and that's being defended by a thief. So that's not gonna be very good either. They're probably gonna lose that. So I go into mid, I'm in a 1v2, and my teammate actually comes in, so it's not a bad situation, but yeah, I want to precast my Hilt Bash into the end of their Sword 3 here, and we can just get kills in like between the nodes and see if we can kind of like get a snowball for our team going so that they can capture the nodes, because we're having a lot of trouble. We're struggling to capture nodes here. So the only way I can really prevent that from being an issue is just by getting kills, because if I start capping nodes for my team, it's not going to improve our situation. So we get these 2 kills here at home. One of ours dies at mid. Our Mesmer is dead again, and the thief here is trying to leave too far. At this point, we're going to have an advantage here because we've got 2 kills and they've only got 1. So I put all my damage into the enemy Lich form. That was like an 11k. Yeah, rapid fire, it's pretty good. So I just cleave this out, and we get another 2 kills. So they have 2 respawning and 2 that just respawned. So we can push into far and get a lot of presence here. But our Mesmer is for, yeah, some reason chasing the Revenant off node here instead of pushing with our team. They're not really playing their role correctly because they're not really a duelist, but they're playing very much like it. So we get a nice kill here because we 2v1 this, and that allows us to get another kill on the Ranger who's trying to res. So we get some pretty good damage here. Yeah, we're gonna kill this Ranger for sure here because they can't get the res, and yeah, we're both like pretty high damage roamer slash DPS here, a Renegade and a Soulbeast. So we get those 2 kills. Our Mesmer is dead on the other side of the map. Yeah, it's kind of not good because our Mesmer keeps dying, so it's forcing us to rotate even faster and faster to make up for the fact that they are getting snowballed on one side of the map, so we get a snowball harder on the other side of the map, right? So we get that kill there, and we let the Revenant res. Now we're going to chase their other Revenant, and we get a really good takedown there. They're forced to use their heal. I CC them while they are using the Glint heal skill there, because they heal off of damage. So if I CC them, they're going to most likely going to eat that CC because they want to get hit by damage so that they heal from it. So it's best to, yeah, use CC when they use their Glint heal. And we're going to now push into this Minion Master Necro because this is a really easy thing to +1 because they don't have stun breaks. And yeah, when we're 2v1ing that, it's very easy to get damage off on it. So we are +1ing this with a, I believe that is a Necromancer, but they decide to leave. Or no, that's my Thief, yeah. Thief and Necromancer actually. So yeah, we're gonna get this kill. And now as soon as I get the kill, well, it's a Necromancer and a Thief. So technically the Necro should be capping, not the Thief. And since I have the most rotational presence, I obviously don't cap. But yeah, we see this Necro here. I use my Sic Em into rapid fire, and they pretty much lost all of their shroud off of that, so they're super vulnerable here, and I've still got a lot of damage left. So we get that down, and the enemy team is starting to come in, so I demerge and put down my smoke scale F2 just to put down some blind field that others can use to possibly get blinds with projectiles. But yeah, we aren't really in need of that. My team is going for a home, and I really want to decap far because the end of the match is going to come soon. But I see that the enemy minion master is there, and that's a duelist build, and I don't want to be 1v1ing a duelist because that's a disadvantage fight. Now I see that my Necro, or that's my Thief, is actually on far, and they actually get the decap while I am baiting them off the node, which is really nice. I one wolf pack here and use my my burst there, but they immediately lich on me, and I just swapped out of my Greatsword, so it's a really bad timing for me, and I get killed there. So you have to be very careful with your weapon swap there, because if you get caught in the Longbow, then you don't have any defense other than the Longbow 3 for stealth. But because I use one wolf pack, that would reveal me because it would do an extra attack right after. So I kind of screwed myself there. But my Thief is going to get the decap anyways, so that's kind of nice. Now we need to win this match, we need to snowball into this engineer here and then push into mid. Now the engineer kites, so that complicates the situation, so now I'm forced to 1v1 at mid versus the enemy Soul Beast. But I figure we have enough time left in this match, so I'm going to go and help my team at far first so that they don't die, because if we die, then it doesn't matter if I win mid, because then I'll be outnumbered. So I go to help my team here. The Renegade actually survives, which is good, but my Thief doesn't. So we're in a bad situation. Even though my team is winning mid, yeah, I'm now outnumbered and I have none of my cooldowns. I have the merge and I can use the F2, but yeah, it's a Rev and a Necro. I'm gonna have tons of Condis on me. We win mid, but we're going to lose other things because of that, because I'm dead. So you got to be really careful about your positioning. You got to choose your fights wisely. If I'm in a situation where I'm outnumbered, it's going to be hard to disengage. So if I see that my team is going to die, I need to disengage sooner than I would on like a Mesmer or a Thief, which can almost instantly disengage, right? So on this build, I wasn't disengaging soon enough to survive those situations, and that's kind of the reason why we're not snowballing as hard as we should, because I keep getting in situations where I'm over invested, and yeah, my teammates could probably survive better too. So we almost get the kill on their hollow here. They go into stealth, so that's going to be hard to get the kill. If I had used my reveal a little bit later instead of sooner, then we probably could have got the kill there, but then I would have done less damage. My teammate goes down here again, so it's going to be really hard. I have to hold the node, but we also have to get the decap at far. So I think at this point we just lose, but yeah, it's kind of an example of how dying as a roamer, I mean the game was very winnable. At this point it's not winnable, but it was very winnable if I hadn't died. And a lot of the situations where I died were definitely, you know, there was potential for me not to die there. So that's really important that you play opportunistically and don't just take every fight that you see. So yeah, that is the Sic Em Ranger. And the final build I'll be showing for the roamer role is sort of like a DPS and a roamer, because it has a lot of good damage and sustain, but it doesn't have really good disengage. But it can play the role of a roamer very well because of its ability to chase down targets who are trying to kite. So unlike a normal DPS where it's hard to land your damage on someone if they're very mobile, this build can chase down kills sort of like a roamer can. So its mobility mostly comes from the phase traversal, which is a 1200 range port to the target, but since it's to a target, you can't really disengage with it unless there's someone in a location away from where you are that you can target. So rotating between nodes, pretty good at disengaging. Rotating away from a node that isn't necessarily towards a node, you don't really have a lot of kiting potential. You can also use the Sword 5, which will give you a lot of instant access to ports in those kind of like situations where you're being chased by two people and you want to get away from one of them, so you port to the other one. So that's kind of how you can disengage, but otherwise you are very susceptible to focus, but you do have a lot of sustain on this build. So you have the Dance of Death, which gives you lifesteal from battle scars. So whenever you put vulnerability on someone, you'll get Dance of Death procs, which will give battle scars, which will basically allow you to do more healing and damage the more you hit things, so it scales up in larger fights. There's also the Glint heal, which is one of the best heals in the game, and the reason for this is because when you activate it, it will convert all damage into healing. So you use this to play very aggressively, usually, because the more aggressive you play, the more damage you'll take. So what you do is you kind of just like sit with the Facet of Light ready to be cast, and then once it's, once you're about to take like a lot of damage, or after you've taken a lot of damage and they're trying to finish you off, you can put on the Facet of Light. But see, the thing is, you have to be careful with it, because if you wait too long and you take too much damage from it, and you're trying to greed too much for the value of the heal, then they're just going to stop their damage and just wait till you use it and then resume after it's done. So when you are using the Shiro stance, what I like to do is just wait for my energy to pool, and basically pooling energy means to just kind of like wait for it to come up and then go in and use a lot of abilities in succession, rather than using them as you get enough energy to use them, because that way you have more options for what you can do rather than just using it as you get it, right? So pooling energy is really nice in the Shiro stance because everything is so expensive in the Shiro stance, but also because if you wait for your Glint stance to be almost up before you start going in with your Shiro stuff, you're a lot safer, because the Shiro stance doesn't really have an amazing heal. It's more of an aggressive heal, and yeah, if you get caught in the Shiro stance without energy, you're pretty much dead. So Glint is very safe, and Shiro is very aggressive but very unsafe. You also have a decent amount of condition counter on this build. Whenever you swap legends, you'll cleanse a condition. Whenever you use your staff 4, you'll cleanse 2 conditions. And you also have cleansing on your staff, and you have Rune of Resistance, which will give you resistance every 45 seconds. And you have to use your elite skill. So your elite is a 35-second cooldown, or in the Shiro stance it's a 5-second cooldown, but usually you're not using Jade Winds for the resistance. So yeah, you have a decent amount of condition counter on this build, and you can always just use Facet of Light when you have a lot of conditions on you, because then when you take that damage later while you have it, you can heal that up instead. So it's like very easy to play around conditions with Facet of Light. And you also have a lot of CC on this build, which can set up your burst damage combos. So you have the Facet of Chaos, which is a very massive dragon attack. It'll launch enemies away from you. You have your Staff 5, which does a lot of knockbacks in a row, so it gets through like few stacks of stability very easily, and it's just a really good CC. You also have the Jade Winds in Shiro stance, so you can stun the entire enemy team because this has a number of targets 5. So yeah, it's an insane CC, and while it's a high cost, it's a low cooldown. So if you pool your energy and use Jade Winds very carefully, you can actually secure kills very easily. So where does your damage come from? Well, in the Shiro stance, you have Impossible Odds, which will make basically anything you do deal more damage. It's generally useful to use Impossible Odds with your Staff auto attack or your Sword 3. You want to be using Phase Traversal to set up your combos, so you pour it in, it gives you quickness and unblockable, and then you just follow up with a lot of damage. But since it's 35 energy, you want to be pooling your energy, as I said. So when you swap into Shiro, unless you immediately need to be on someone, then what you'll do is you'll wait around, kind of like look for a opening, and then you'll phase traversal once you've got maybe like 70 energy, and then you'll have like 40 left. That gives you enough to use Unrelenting Assault and all of your sword burst. But if you immediately phase traversal when you swap into Shiro, you're going to be at 15 energy, which means you can only do really an Unrelenting Assault, and if you get CC'd as you phase traversal in there, you're basically dead because you're really far away from the Reposting Shadows cooldown of 40 energy. Your damage comes from the Facet of Elements, which is just a pulsing area of effect damage. Really good for putting on the node, zoning enemies with it, or just cleaving down bodies. You also have the Facet of Strength. This will just pulse out might, so you generally just want to use this off cooldown because of the Draconic Echo, which will keep it pulsing that might. And then you also have a lot of damage on your sword weapon set. So your sword 2 will deal more damage to isolated foes. So if you only hit one target, then it'll do like double damage. And if you hit like multiple foes, it'll do less, but it'll spread it out to all of them. Same thing with sword 3 sorta, because it will port between different foes, but if there's only one, then it will basically do all of the attacks on one of them. So that's kind of why this is more like a roamer build, because it's good at hitting singular targets and isolating enemies out. So generally you want to use your sword 4 into a sword 2 or sword 5, which just purely does damage. And yeah, just pretty much all of your sword attacks will deal damage, so you always want to use sword 4 before one of the other ones, because it'll make those do more damage or secure them. So generally what I like to do for my burst combo is use your enchanted daggers, because that's a heal skill that deals damage, and the damage is very high for each hit. And then you'll use your phase traversal to get in and get quickness. Then you'll immediately use your Facet of Nature and then use it twice for the active effect. It costs basically nothing to use it because it's an upkeep skill. So you want to use the passive and then the active immediately. And what this will do is it will do a pretty high damage attack that removes 2 boons, and then because of Draconic Echo, it'll give you the passive effect for 6 more seconds, which is basically more lifesteal. So it's going to give you lifesteal on your burst. So after you use your Facet of Nature on the Shiro stance, you don't want to use the glint one, you will use one of your sword abilities. So you can either do Shackling Wave if you're going for more aggression, or if you want a more balanced defensive or aggressive one, or if like the target is singled out, you'll be using your sword 2 or sword 3. So basically if you're in a team fight, you want to start out using your sword 4 and then use sword 2, sword 5, or if you're like in a 1v1 kind of situation, you want to use your sword 3 and then your sword 2, because that's better for like isolated enemies. So because the Herald is a roamer slash team fighter, I am going to go to mid, and we do have a Tempest on our team, so that's pretty good. It's like DPS Tempest, but I do see that, yeah, there's a Soulbeast over here that I want to jump on and try to do some damage on them, because they are isolated, which means that my sword skills will do more damage. And I'm just trying to pressure them. They have stability, and they're just kiting me around, and I can go to home and +1 that, but then my team is really gonna struggle in this team fight here, so I'm going to stay here and just keep pressuring the target, because they're just gonna free cast on my team. My Dragon Hunter does go down though, even though they're getting supported. My Ellie goes for the, I think that was the Glyph res, but there was too much poison on it, so we couldn't get that. Maybe I could have gone for the res there, but I was getting too pressured as well. So we're now going to be in a 2v3 here, and we're just going to try to stall as long as possible. Now this is normally not what a roamer should do, but because I am sort of like playing 2 roles at once, I am able to try to like stall. And like if I leave my Tempest alone, basically, even though I kind of want to be going around and getting kills, my Tempest is going to die if I leave them alone. So I do want to be counter pressuring for them and just hope that my team figures out how to survive next time we regroup. So yeah, my thief goes down now, and I'm just still trying to kite, still trying to survive, and I try to get a little bit of counter pressure on this thief. Maybe we can get a kill here, but they get into stealth here. My Tempest is still supporting me pretty well, but yeah, I have to play safely. We've lost the node on middle, which is the legacy mid node, so there's really not a high chance of us keeping that decapped. So I decide to actually, well, I could go home and +1 that, but I do see that the enemy core guard is maybe a better target. So we change targets because we figure out that maybe their Soul Beast is not the best target. And yeah, my team is focusing this core guard in here, which is a very good target because they don't have a lot of self-peel for themselves, they just have a lot of healing. So we're able to do a lot of damage, and that allows us to eventually start killing the rest of their team, because it turns out that the Soul Beast wasn't really providing a lot of support for their team, they were just surviving themselves. So us focusing a different target ended up being a better situation. So yeah, often you want to be going for the supports rather than like a duelist, because this Soul Beast looks like they're kind of like a duelist in a team fight. So it ended up being better for us to go for the support, and then once the support dies, just everything else will just kind of die as well. So that is something you want to be doing as a roamer or even a DPS, is just trying to support anti-carry, right? Like the roamer is always trying to get kills, and the support is always trying to prevent kills. So if you go for the support, then you prevent them as well. So I do go down here because dealing with downstate rangers is so difficult, and then Rev kills me while I'm really low. But I do get glyphed by my Tempest, so that is really nice. And that allows us to, well, they get revived as well by their support, so it goes both ways. And at this point though, we have captured middle because we forced that fight off of the mid node and sort of like pressured them in roads. We basically forced the full cap for our team, which is good. If I had tried to fight on node or let them survive, then we wouldn't be in this situation. So often just pressuring people and chasing kills like that can allow your teammates who are doing their roles to do them a little bit better. So now at this point I do want to go and help out home node a little bit. Not because I think that we can win a 2v3, but because I know that these two players will push into mid, and if I have to fight on a node, then I have less advantage because then I can't kite as well and survive as well. So I pressure them until they realize that they need to push on to mid, and by the time I do get to mid though, the allied druid here is able to, fight with me. So I stalled them long enough. And at this point I should really just leave the druid here because they can pretty much 1v2 this and survive, because the druid is, one of the more tanky duelists. But we do get a kill on their Soul Beast, so this is a pretty good situation for us. Now, I technically don't need to be killing this support guardian, I can just leave my druid here and they'll pressure that anyways. So yeah, going home to create momentum for my team and actually win nodes, rather than getting kills on a node we already own, is the play. So I am +1ing this Weaver here, and they get off the node, which means that it's going to be harder for me to get the kill here. So I go into my glint stance here. I'm going to precast my heal here so that they basically can't counter pressure me at all. So I can just basically press my auto attack, and I see that they use all of their damage here, so I pop my glint heal and basically heal up all that damage. And now I'm at full health, and they've used a lot of their cooldowns, so I can just keep auto attacking and get the kill here. So that's really important as a Rev, is that you really don't get counter pressured by using your defensives while also being aggressive at the same time. We did lose mid, however, while I was +1ing, so I guess our druid went to far instead and decided not to hold mid. But yeah, we are going to secure this cap for our thief, and I'm gonna just leave. I know that the enemy thief is still alive, and because of that I don't really want to waste time. I'll let the thief, that thief on my team is running like a duelist build, so right, like they want to be there and I don't, so they would just be wasting my time with the stealth over there. Now if I could reveal them, that would be nice, but I didn't have it off cooldown at the time. So I'm just looking for a position here to go to. I see that the enemy weaver is pushing into our home again, but I want to get kills for my team at mid first because I see that their revenant is here, and getting a kill on their revenant is really good for our team because that's a lot of their pressure, and if I can kill that, then I can easily just go somewhere else. Like, we own mid, so we don't really need to be getting their whole team killed here. We just need to get enough kills to secure that cap that we already own, right? So we're trying to like play an aggressive defense right now. So I am getting the kill on their rev here, but my team is going down at the same time. So I go for a stomp and I get knocked. So I go for the... Actually, I think I knocked them out of the res. Yeah, the Guardian was going for a res there, and I knocked them out, so that was pretty good. But that allows us to basically start winning this team fight. But we're still so low that, yeah, it's going to be hard for us to really... Because it looks like our Dragon Hunter really has like no sustain, even with the support. So I have to be careful. Looks like their team is rotating out, so now I can rotate out. I don't want to be 3v1ing someone like that, because it's not going to be efficient usage of my time, really. So I go back in too far and +1 the Weaver. They use their blink, which means that they don't really have many escapes at this point. So I am playing very aggressively. They pop their stun break into my Jade Winds, and you can see that the Stone Resonance procs while they're invulnerable, so I don't really want to go on them. I'm pooling some energy just in case they want to counter pressure me, so I'm playing sort of safe here. But yeah, their team is coming here to help them. I land a really good Jade Winds while their stun break is on cooldown, and that allows us to get the Weaver really low. And at this point, I am getting a little bit of counter pressure by the Soulbeast, but yeah, I am just going to keep chasing the kill, and I know that as soon as they can port out, I'll have the Shiro port ready to chase. So that allows us to secure the kill, and now our Druid can get home node while their Duelist is dead. So we're allowing our team to do their job more easily by eliminating the enemy player that is in that same role. So yeah, we were having troubles winning our 1v1s, so just kill their Duelist and then they don't have to 1v1. And we're just securing kills here. We just kill things so fast that they can't even use their res skills. And we're just chasing this. So now my Dragon Hunter goes down again, but we're gonna go for the stomp here. I think there's the ports on top, or he ported back. So we're gonna go for the cleave, just because we don't want our team to rally anyone. So we're gonna secure this kill, and yeah, I can just cleave this out, and it looks like at this point pretty much the match is won. Even though my team really lacked a lot of, like, my DH wasn't really surviving in team fights, my duelists weren't winning their 1v1s, it just shows how much pressure you can do as a roamer and eventually make your team start winning their roles. Even though you can't do their roles for them, you can sort of like +1 them and create an easier situation for them to do their roles. So that's kind of how you want to think of a roamer, is you don't want to stand on nodes, you don't want to 1v1, you don't want to be sitting in team fights for too long, but rather you do want to be getting kills, because if the enemy team isn't on the map, then they first of all can't kill your team, and if you're killing them, then they can't do their role. So yeah, that's pretty much the gist of a roamer. So if you like this kind of content, then give it a like and subscribe for more. So roamer is the final role that I will be showing in the 4 roles of PvP rotation series. So if you want to check out the other roles, go to the playlist in the description below. Also, share this video series to anyone trying to get into Guild Wars 2 PvP. I think it's very important that they not only understand rotations, because that'll improve their gameplay, but it's also sort of the fun of the entire class system of Guild Wars 2 PvP. That's pretty much it. So enjoy, and I will see you guys next time.